Okay, thank you everybody for joining us this evening. This is the next in our series of conversations with myself, Martin Sigsworth, the Senior Employment Manager from Thomas Pocklington Trust. Just got a few little housekeeping things to go through before we get started. So as always, this webinar is going to be recorded this evening and will be shared with everybody after we're finished, so probably tomorrow. Please feel free to share that link with friends or anybody who you think might be interested. There is also a section for any questions. If you want to ask Charlie any questions, there's a little box which is Q&A. If you can put your questions in there, we'll get to them at the end. Amandeep, as usual, will read them out and either myself or Charlie will answer them. For any JAWS users or assistive tech users, just to reassure you that this is a webinar, so don't worry about muting your microphones or turning off your videos. The only people that can be seen on the screen and heard at this point is myself and Charlie. Okay, so as I said, I'm Martin Sigsworth. I'm the Senior Employment Manager at Thomas Pocklington Trust. And the gist of these conversations is to talk to another blind or partially sighted person about their career, some of the challenges that they've faced and how they've overcome them. I'm really excited that we've got Charlie joining us this evening. In the interest of transparency, me and Charlie did used to work together a few years ago. We worked in the same team, and since he kind of left us, he's just gone from strength to strength, and I'm really excited that he's joining us, and I'm really glad that he agreed. So without further ado, I'm going to just ask Charlie to give a quick introduction of himself, and then we'll get into it.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Martin. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in, whether you're tuning in live or you're watching back on a recording. So just a little bit about me, I suppose. My name's Charlie, and I am currently a civil servant, and I'm currently on the Fast Stream, which is a development programme to help people to get to senior management in the civil service. I'm on the generalist stream.
Great, thanks, Charlie. Okay, so one of the, in the description, one of the reasons why we've got you on this evening is because you've kind of moved careers a couple of times and done that quite successfully, I've got to say. So I kind of just wanted to start at the beginning, really. So when you come out of university, you originally wanted to be a teacher. Could you tell me could you just tell us a little bit about what that experience was like, training to be a teacher and things like that?
Absolutely. Okay, so yeah, my dream was always to actually be a secondary languages teacher, so German and French. So I went to uni and I studied French and German, and I lived in Germany for a year, which was absolutely amazing. And throughout my time at uni, I did volunteering in schools and things like that. And it was what I almost decided that I really wanted to do. So I originally applied to one university, and unfortunately I didn't start at that uni due to accessibility issues. So I then moved to, I had to take a year out. So in that time I volunteered in schools, and I found an amazing school at a fantastic uni where the support was brilliant, because obviously being a trainee teacher in languages, you need, so I have no useful vision at all, I'm totally blind. So I needed a support worker who was trilingual, so English, French and German. And the uni helped me to find the right people, and I started the teaching, started the course, and it was absolutely amazing. It was everything I hoped for at the start, but then it sort of went a bit downhill from there. So I realized that I was very stressed. I realized that actually I wasn't very good at what I was trying to do, and I was giving it my very best shot, and for various reasons it just didn't work out. And I remember one particular day I sat and had a meeting with my mentor, who was fantastic, and my university mentor in school, well, my university tutor and school mentor. And I realized that actually it wouldn't be the right sort of career move, and I chose to leave on a high. So I chose to leave at what I thought was the right time for me, and I'm really glad that I had that experience in the classroom. And I would never dissuade anybody, if you're thinking of teaching, I would never ever say don't teach, but I would always say try and, you know, look around, try and sort of gauge your options, gauge what providers are out there. But yeah, I found it to be overall, actually, even though I didn't pursue teaching as a career, I did find the experience to be fairly positive, and I met some brilliant people along the way.
What were some of the reasons, you know, why you found teaching kind of quite challenging? And obviously, you know, we're talking from your experience, and everybody's experience is different. But you know, what were some of the main things where you just thought this maybe isn't for me, and like.
Oh gosh, everything. I think it's fair to say that I think in particular, I really enjoyed languages, and I really enjoyed when I was working with smaller groups, but I just found the whole class teaching very difficult. I found that the amount of preparation required was an awful lot. So we would spend hours preparing a lesson that we would teach in obviously 50 minutes or an hour. And the amount of prep required and the amount of stress that entailed, and the amount of stress that was entailed in actually standing at the front of the classroom, making sure the class were on task, making sure that pupils did what they were meant to be doing. It was very, very stressful. And I realized one group that I taught particularly, I just thought, can I see myself doing this in 20 years? Can I see myself doing this in even a year? And my honest answer was no. And I think that was when I chose to pursue a different career path.
Yeah. So how did that kind of, you know, I guess, how did that feel? Because you've spent a large chunk of you know, time at university training to be a teacher, to do what you think you love. Like how did you feel when that reality struck, that this isn't actually what I want to do?
I was very disappointed for a while, I would say, very, very disappointed, because I obviously realised that what I wanted to do I wasn't good at, and I didn't feel I was capable of doing it well. But I think as well, I sort of felt almost a bit relieved, I think, when I walked out, because I realised that actually, you know, I wouldn't have to do this for life. It's not a life and death thing. And as I say, I made some amazing contacts through the teaching, and I met some fantastic people, some really, really dedicated teachers, some really fantastic practitioners. So for me, at the end of the day, I almost felt like a sense of relief, I think, on the last day, and a bit sort of nervous as well, because I really didn't know where I'd go next, to be honest. I didn't have a clue what I would do.
That was going to be my next question, actually.
Yeah.
Did you have any idea kind of what you wanted to do next, or?
Well, I think at that stage I was sort of looking for anything and everything that I could get. I applied for so many roles. I think, as everyone does at the start of their career, you don't really know what you want to do. You don't really know where you want to go, but you want a job. And that's the thing. So I was applying for jobs left, right and centre, and I applied for quite a variety of different roles, some using languages, some not. And I was lucky to be successful in a job at RNIB, where I worked for about a year.
Yeah, because that's right. You kind of moved. So after teaching, how long was it before you moved to RNIB? Like, how long did that take? Was it fairly quick?
Yeah, fairly quick. Yeah. So from leaving to first day, it was about 4 to 5 months.
Yeah.
And I think I needed that time just to give myself a bit of a sort of thinking time and breathing space to think, actually, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And then to find roles that I thought, you know what, I can do this, and then applied for different things.
Yes. Yeah. And kind of at that point, did you seek out any advice? Did you get any good advice? You know,
Yeah, absolutely. So Pocklington's employment service wasn't really a thing at the time, even though I probably should be flagging that everybody should be going to Pocklington for all their career help and guidance. But I used the help that I knew was around. So at the time, Blind in Business were absolutely amazing with me. So they gave me a lot of help, a lot of support with simple things like how to fill out an application form, how to interview, things like that. And it definitely wasn't the first job I applied for that I got. I applied for so many different things, and I got rejection. But I think I was lucky to eventually get something. So if you are looking at the moment, all I can just say is keep going, especially at the moment with the pandemic. It's not an easy time, but definitely don't give up. Just keep plugging away, and eventually something should come up.
How, and by the way, I just want to second Charlie's compliments of Blind in Business. Like they are a great organisation that work in a similar space to what TPT are doing. And this is by no means a plug for TPT services tonight. This is more just to give people an idea of what, you know, the different journeys that people have been through, really. So check out Blind in Business, and also check out TPT employment. But look, you're getting a lot of rejections. How did you deal with that? Like because I've been through that before, and it is tricky, isn't it? Like just to stay resilient and to keep on going, really. What did you do to deal with that?
I suppose requesting feedback as much as possible. Now, I know a lot of organisations don't provide feedback, but I was very lucky because it was a programme called the Trainee Grade Scheme, which basically aimed to get blind and visually impaired people into work. They actually would offer feedback at application stage. So even if you think an employer might not offer feedback, it's always worth asking for it. So I asked for feedback, and I used Blind in Business. I used RNIB's employment service. I spoke to friends. I spoke to family. I was getting people to read my applications and read them, drafting. And then I applied for a role and did an interview, and then was successful for a role.
Yeah. So what job were you doing at RNIB then? That was part of the trainee grade scheme, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's
a 12-month, well, 51-week paid. It's kind of quite similar to the TPT internship program. So paid opportunity where you get training and development on the job, isn't it? You're actually doing a real job.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what was it that you were doing?
So I worked in the field of audio description. So on TV, films, for anyone who doesn't know, TV programs and films, some of them have what's called audio description. So that means that what's on the screen is described verbally as well for blind and partially sighted people. So I worked on projects around audio description. I helped them to organise an event focused around audio description. I wrote news articles for the website, the RNIB website at the time, and basically assisted on projects around audio description.
Oh, brilliant. And how was that time at RNIB, particularly comparing it to your previous experience of working, which had been in teaching?
Yeah, I found it to be really positive, actually. I found the experience to be really good. It was a nice place to start my career. It was, I had some great colleagues. I had a fantastic line manager, and just gave me really good advice. So that's one thing I would really recommend, is if you're working and you get on well with your line manager, it's always worth reaching out to them and being really honest about, this is what I want to do, these are my interests, and have that sort of career coaching conversation and have those development conversations, because I've always found those to be really useful.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And also going back to that feedback point that you made earlier on, it's always vital, particularly at the start of your career, or even if you're transitioning to a different career, just to try and get as much feedback as you can. And sometimes it's hard to get it, particularly if somebody rings you up to tell you that you haven't got a job. But if you've kind of got a gut instinct that maybe one part of your interview didn't go very well, or that ask them about it in that point, because people are pretty not great at giving feedback. But if you ask them specifically on something like, oh, how do you think I answered that? How do you think I answered that? Then you normally find that people will then open up and go, oh, well, I think you could have done this, or you could have done that. I think just getting feedback pre and while you're in work as well, like nobody's walking into a job as a finished article, are they?
No, absolutely not. No. And I think one really good way to ask for feedback is to ask 3 questions. So what have I done well? What do I need to improve? And how do you recommend I improve on that? Those are the 3 sorts of questions when I'm asking for feedback. That's the feedback that I'm seeking.
Yeah. I think
those are really key questions.
I also started at RNIB on the trainee grade scheme back in like 2007, I think.
Wow.
And from my perspective, it was, I'd just come out of uni and that was my first job. And looking back, it was kind of quite handy for me just to get a grasp on the type of technology that I'd need in the workplace as well. Like, I think there's some stuff which was recommended to me at that point that I didn't really know about. You know, like I'd gone through uni, but it wasn't, I hadn't used some of that kit, like a Braille note taker and things like that, you know, at that point it was kind of really, really valuable for me to adapt to the workplace as well. So, but I think, you know, I think there's a lot more information out there now than what there was like kind of 13 years ago about, you know, the accessible assistive technology and things like that. So you were at RNIB, enjoyed it, and then that opportunity was coming to an end. So what was the next step for you?
So I knew that I wanted to work for the benefit of people, and I knew I wanted to work in a role where it sort of worked on issues that affected people's day-to-day lives, I suppose. So I applied for all different things throughout my time at RNIB, and I was encouraged to do that. So I was applying for various graduate schemes, and I also applied for the role at Pocklington, which I did for a couple of months, which was really useful because it gave me a bit of almost like relief. So I knew that if I didn't have, if I was unsuccessful with the graduate schemes, at least I could have a really interesting role in Pocklington, and I was really lucky to be successful for the internship, and then a couple of weeks later for a permanent role, which really sort of took the pressure off, I think.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that you were lucky, to be honest.
Yeah,
I remember.
It felt like it.
I remember recruiting for that role actually, and one of the things that's like, which I was thinking about this today, that I thought really stood out with what you'd done at that point was, before you'd even put in your CV for that role, you gave me a call and introduced yourself and asked a few questions about the job and, you know, what was required. And, you know, you told me a little bit about yourself. And I think that really helped when that application come through, because I remember speaking to my manager at the time and going, because we kind of struggled a little bit to fill that role as well. And I remember saying to her, I've just received this call off this guy. You know, it's really promising, like, but, you know, obviously we'll wait and see when his CV comes through.
Yeah.
But then, you know, I was keeping an eye out for it. And, you know, obviously you then interviewed and, you know, you totally earned it on your own merit. But I think in terms of like, you know, that introduction, making like a kind of good first impression, that was something which I felt really stood out when you'd done that. So.
Thank you. Yeah, that can be really useful as well for anyone else who's looking for roles. If they list a contact point on the advert, it can be worth giving the person a call or sending them an email to have a quick intro chat about the role.
Yeah, I think particularly even if you have like a couple of questions, or, you know, you want to check that your experience is relevant for that role, I think it can make, because, you know, ultimately what you want to do is stand out from a crowd. And if you've already spoke to the recruiter and made a good impression, then that helps you stand out. It's something that I've known other people to do as well, and, you know, and it's really benefited them too. Like, you know, I'd say only do that if you know, if the contact details are on the job advert or the job description, and that invitation to contact for more information is made available. Like, you know, I wouldn't say go and hunt that person down on LinkedIn and then message them through that. But I think if there's an open invitation to find out more, then yeah, it's always a good idea to do that. So yeah, you were at TPT for a few months, right? About 6 months, maybe longer.
About three or 4 months. And so yeah, in the meantime, I was applying for other roles, and I applied for a graduate scheme called the National Graduate Development Programme, which is 2 years in local government. So there's a stringent recruitment process, which I was lucky enough to go through and pass, again with a lot of assistance from people like Blind in Business, RNIB when needed, things like that. So yeah, did you want to talk about the role or about the recruitment process?
Let's talk about the recruitment process. I think that might be quite interesting. Yeah, because I don't really know what, I knew that you bagged it, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
So kept it secret from us.
Well, got to think back now. So there was an application form, then there was online tests at the time. At the time they weren't accessible, but I think they are now. So always reach out to the relevant employer, I'd say, if you go for a graduate scheme or role requiring a test. Always worth reaching out to them to explain exactly what the adjustments are that you need. So whether that be extra time, whether that be to undertake the tests in an assessment centre or with somebody virtually so they can read the questions to you, whatever the adjustments are, it's always worth reaching out. Then there was an interview, so it was a video interview which I did by phone rather than by video, because I felt that was easier and it was also deemed as a reasonable adjustment. Then there was an assessment centre, which was a half-a-day event with a group exercise. I think there was a presentation, like a written report, and there was another exercise as well, I can't remember. So yeah, I did those. And then there was council interviews. So I interviewed with a range of councils, and I was really lucky to get a job at Redbridge Council, which is a London borough, for anyone who doesn't know.
Yeah, I remember that was like quite a distance from where you were living at the time as well, though, wasn't it? Like it was quite a commitment to go and to go and work somewhere. Like how long? Like I can't remember exactly, but it was a long commute, right?
It was about, on a good day, it would be an hour 50 minutes each way, so nearly 2 hours each way. But it was so worth it, and I felt as though I gained so much from that role. It was worth the time. What
made you apply for that in the first place? Did you always know? Because that's kind of like this is like the start of your kind of career in the civil service, isn't it? Like,
well, that's local government.
So
I knew I wanted to work on roles where you'd have sort of an impact on people's day-to-day lives, and I knew that was a career driver for me. So I went for roles where I felt also it was quite generalist, because I didn't want to specialize too much in a particular area, and I didn't have the specialist skills to offer. Still probably don't, but I wanted to get a wide breadth of experience, because I feel that's a really good thing to have. So that was why the NGDP really appealed to me. So I worked across 4 different areas when I was at Redbridge. I worked across HR, then housing, then child protection, then housing, and then call it project delivery, internal project delivery within the council.
And how switching departments like that? So was that like kind of every 6 months, did you say?
Yeah, it was, absolutely.
Was each team kind of good at making the adjustments that you needed, like the workplace adjustments?
Absolutely. So I had a computer which stayed with me throughout the whole time, with the screen reader that I use on there, and I had somebody from Guide Dogs who kindly showed me the routes I needed, and then I used Access to Work. So I used a taxi from the closest tube station, because I found the route to get from the station to the office, even though it was very short, I found it very challenging, because it was down a busy high street with loads of boards around, loads of A boards and things like that. But yeah, I found the people to be absolutely fantastic at Redbridge, and in all my jobs, actually, I've never had a job where I haven't found people to be accommodating. And I find that as long as you're really clear with people, and if you say, this is what I need to be able to do my job, 99.9% of people I find genuinely really want to help you to do that and to be the best you can be in those roles.
Absolutely, So did you, it sounds like it was all good, but did you kind of face any challenges in those roles?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I would say mainly around switching so often meant I had to learn a lot of new things in a lot of different roles very quickly. So I went from thinking about the gender pay gap reporting requirements to thinking about children who were sexually exploited or who are at risk of going missing. And then I went into look at our borough's housing strategy at the time, and then I looked at various projects within the council. So all of those required, I suppose project management would be the key sort of golden thread, if you like, throughout that. But I would say that the challenge was really getting up to speed on a new area quickly and making those, I suppose, connections within the teams that I was in, and knowing who did what in terms of their work areas, things like that.
Yeah, yeah. And in terms of like, you know, systems, you know, things like databases, and were they kind of fairly accessible, or?
Yeah, people just used Word and Excel. In child protection we had a database, and that was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was yeah, there were no accessibility issues, and when there were, I find it always really useful to have IT on speed dial. So IT were really useful and really good to get in touch with. So if ever I had any problems, they could just come and sort them out.
Yeah, always good to get to know the IT guys, isn't it?
Yeah,
if you can.
absolutely. The IT guys, people at reception, everybody like that, really.
I think it's, you know, it's also interesting the access to work spot that you got with traveling to work. I'm not sure people always realize that you don't need to get the taxi for the whole journey, and it might just be like one section of it that you need.
Absolutely.
You know, that you need that for. I think particularly if, you know, if the last thing you really need, isn't it, is at the start of the day to be really stressed out, getting down a high street that's really busy and difficult to navigate, and then particularly at the end of a long busy day as well, to be doing that. Like, I think that's, you know, like that's some of the, our offices are based in Euston, and like walking through Euston, well, before we went into lockdown and everything, but walking through Euston Station after a long day and you're knackered, it was just like, yeah, really, really difficult. But yeah, it's always worth bearing in mind that support is there, and you know, it doesn't mean that you have to do a full journey. It might just be part. So
yeah, absolutely.
So you had a good 2 years working in local government.
Yeah.
And then the next step, that kind of, I'm assuming that kind of program come to an end.
So yes, and I was applying for all sorts of roles, but I wanted to get an overview of national government, because I find in local government we talked a lot about, you know, government are doing this, government are doing that, as in national government, and I didn't really understand what government was, and I wanted just to get a bit of an overview.
Yeah.
So I originally applied for the fast stream because it's a really supported route up to management. I was unsuccessful, but I was offered a role which I gladly accepted. So I then worked at DIT, the Department for International Trade, for 2 years in the HR teams in two different roles.
What? So can you just talk us a little bit through those roles, maybe?
Yeah, of course. So I worked in two roles. The first role was on so there was an arm's length body being created, which is basically a new organisation, part of a government department. So that was being created at the time, and there were basically the task was to get people in to the offices, so to recruit people. So my role was what's called onboarding. So it means when you get your job offer, my role was to make sure that you would come in on day one, people would be expecting you, you'd be on payroll, you know, you get your money at the end of the month, and that your IT would be ordered. So that was what I did for the first, I think it's around 6 or 7 months, and then that role came to an end. So because the arm's length body was created and they had their own HR team, so I then moved into a different role in HR where I worked on recruitment projects. So those were projects which aimed to make our department more diverse. So it would be things like recruiting care leavers, things like working on our diversity, equality and diversity things. It would be things like that, basically implementing a system where people could insert their job descriptions and it would show any sort of biased language that was being used, because obviously in the civil service we recruit on the basis of fair and open competition. So it's about, you know, making sure that the job descriptions attracts as wider group of people as possible.
Yeah. So you kind of moved from local government to kind of centralised government.
Yeah.
Was there was there any big differences that you noticed? Anything that was the same?
So first of all was the commute. My commute was a lot quicker, and I didn't need a taxi anymore, so that was nice. The difference I noticed really is national government's got a wider overview that doesn't maybe home in so much into local issues, and that's very, very broad, I know. But I would say the other differences were around I suppose types of work had changed sort of into a more HR focused role. So it was more HR focused, I suppose, for the 2 years. So it was things like that, really. Those would be the main things.
Yeah, and how did you find them kind of, was there any systems or processes like, was that all accessible, or was the kind of certain things that you might have struggled with?
Yeah, occasionally there'd be odd things. So it might be things like writing communications. So if I wanted just to make sure something looked right, I would send it to my line manager, and they're really good. All my line managers actually been fantastic at just checking over to make sure that A, the content is right, and B, the formatting and style is right, because that's really important when we write. And also one of the systems that I used was inaccessible, the job description system, which analysed the job descriptions, but I wasn't really using the system, I was more implementing it. So when it came to renewal, I asked my manager to be on the call. So we called a few different companies, so my manager was able to then describe to me what she could see on the screen, which was really useful to sort of help me draft a paper for our senior management on next steps.
Okay, brilliant.
So I suppose my key learning though, just about asking for any help that you need and not being afraid to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's I as somebody who's line managed in the past, if people don't tell you what that they're struggling, you can't always guess it, and I think you've got to be honest, but equally it's always, if you're doing that, then it's good to have a kind of solution in mind, or an idea of what might work, just as a basis for discussion, because I think unfortunately as blind and partially sighted people, you've kind of got to be the experts, really, haven't you? Well, not the experts, but the guides, the kind of guide that you've got to provide the guidance. And
yeah, I think it's about being solution focused, as you say, and I think it's also around using your contacts. So if you've got a question, first of all, maybe it might be thinking about, okay, how can I change my screen reader or magnification software or whatever? Is there any changes that I can make to that to make the task doable, or something like that? So it's about thinking about the tools you've got around you and thinking, before you contact anyone else, do you think actually can I use what's around me to do the job that I need to do?
I'm forever asking of blind and partially sighted people for workarounds to do stuff if I'm struggling with something, and using like the kind of Facebook groups which are online as well for which have got to kind of provide kind of peer-to-peer support for blind and partially sighted people. I think that was something which I was quite I used to step away from that in my younger years, but I was kind of cutting my nose off to spite my face a bit, because I seem to get all the answers that I ever need these days. So and was there any kind of other challenges that you faced while you were there, or?
I would say that's about it, really. I mean, it's about, I think to me, whenever I've been working, I think a lot of it is actually around building those relationships with people and building really positive relationships with colleagues, so that when you're contacting them, you already have that bond almost built up. So I've found that, going along to any work socials, or going maybe, if it's a breakfast or an after work drinks, or going out for lunch with colleagues, anything like that, I've found to be really useful, and that's across all of my roles, I'd say.
And because when you've started different roles and stuff like that, how I'm assuming that the majority of the time, it probably, I'd be surprised if somebody working at RNIB or TPT hadn't kind of met somebody who's blind or partially sighted before, but how do you, if somebody hadn't ever guided before, or was maybe a bit awkward, like how did you kind of tackle that, you know?
I think it's about, really for me, it's just about telling people what you need. So just saying, you know, can I just hold your elbow, please? And if you don't say, people aren't going to know. And I think also one thing I've done in this job that I'm in now, and I would definitely do again, is sending maybe an email around to my sort of smaller team, not the wider team, but just my small team, just to say, actually, you know, this is how best to sort of work with me. So, you know, it'll be things like, you know, please don't worry about accessibility issues with documents. I will let you know if a document doesn't work for me, things like that. And that's helped to answer and sort of allay any fears, really, especially when I've been onboarded remotely. So started a new job working from home rather than in an office.
Yeah. I remember I was working for RNIB Media. This is quite a few years ago, and it was a massive team. I think the department was about 200 people or something like that, and there was quite a lot of crossover with the different teams. And I remember one of my production managers at the time, the first week that I was there, he was like, "Oh, hey Martin, it's Carlos." And then, you know, a few days later, he was like, do you need me to keep on kind of saying my name? And I was like, I've got to be honest, at the minute I do, because there's so many people. I was like, but don't worry, at some point I'll go, hey Carlos, you don't need to say your name anymore. Or you'll walk in and I'll be like, all right, Carlos, how you doing? And then I think after about 2 weeks, I was like, yeah, we can stop this now. Like, just say, hey, you know. But it was, you know, it's kind of, even things like that, you know, just kind of being, it's kind of being, just telling people what you need, and you know, also creating that space where it's, you know, it's all right for people to ask, I think, as well, is, you know, is pretty good, you know.
Absolutely. And trying to use humor where possible, and trying to just be really open with people. I think that's what I found really really helpful.
This is
I would say.
This is it. Yeah, totally. So so then this is again looking, you know, looking at your resilience, because you've been working at a Department for International Trade, and then you gave the fast stream another stab, right? You weren't put off.
No, not at all. And I think, so what the fast stream is it's a development program to help you to get to senior management. It's a supported route up the sort of chain, but also what I like about it is you get to experience different government departments, because I've worked in DIT for 2 years and it was a really great place to work, actually, really interesting. But I felt as though actually I wanted to spread my wings a bit wider and just to get a bit more of a breadth again of experience across government, and that's what that does. So you get a range of placements in a variety of different roles in a variety of different departments, and you really get to sort of, I think, see what government does. Because when I was in HR, I felt as though I was helping people to get jobs, which was brilliant, and I was helping to, you know, make sure that the right people were recruited and bums were on seats and all the rest of it. But I didn't really feel as though I knew much about what was going on in government, because once people were out in the big wide government world, we'd finished dealing with them because they'd been recruited or whatever.
I think that's it's really, really positive. And I think also it was kind of a bit of a sideways step in terms of career progression, wasn't it? But you've done that with the eye on the kind of bigger prize, so to speak, of where that'd get you to.
Yes, it wasn't a promotion. No, it was a sideways, as Martin said, it's a sideways step, as you say. But I think that it's a very competitive program anyway. So even as an existing civil servant, you don't get any dispensation. You can, for some of the schemes, you can apply without a degree, but I have one anyway. But other than that, you apply as any other candidate does. So there was about 65,000 applicants. So quite high numbers, I suppose. But you know, I think for me, it's about just taking each bit step by step. I was really lucky I had a job anyway, a job that I liked, so it wasn't the be all and end all, and that really took the pressure off. So I was very lucky with that.
I think for anybody who's interested as well, I have a feeling that the fast stream might have opened now for 2021.
It is, it's open now, so get your applications in if you meet the criteria and you want to apply. I think it closes later this week though, so do keep an eye on the website and make sure that you follow the steps that they outline.
We had Katie on last month talking about her experience with Fast Stream as well. So
yeah, that's brilliant. And that's one thing as well, talking of other people's experience of the Fast Stream in terms of civil service in general. Another thing that I think is great about the civil service is it's very good at sort of learning and development. So there's mentoring schemes and lots of bits and pieces. So that's been really useful too.
Brilliant. I think we've got about 5 minutes before we're going to go for questions. So I was just going to run through some like kind of general advice that you know, looking back on the variety of things that you've done, Charlie, and you know the amount of, you know, kind of good decisions that you've made, but also quite brave decisions. Like what advice would you give to any blind or partially sighted people that are maybe starting their careers or looking at changing careers?
Oh gosh, use, I would say, all the networks available. That's been my really key thing. So if a friend of yours is in the job that you want to do, I would speak to them about it, see if you can shadow, see if you can do anything to help yourself to get into that sort of space. Yeah, I think that's my really key thing, is using your networks and building networks as well, and that's been really useful. So when I knew I wanted to apply again for the Fast Stream, I spoke to people who were on the stream, I spoke to my line manager, and I made them fully aware of what I was doing, why I wanted to do it, and they were fully supportive. So if you've got a supportive line manager, if you're currently working, I would never be afraid to reach out to them. You know, obviously if your line manager, if you don't have that relationship, then that's clearly a different story, but I've always had really good relationships with my line managers, so I've never been afraid to reach out to them if I've had questions or issues or anything that I just want to run past them, really.
And in terms of if somebody is considering a role in local or central government, what sort of advice would you give them?
Definitely go for it. I think they're both really good places to work, actually. I think that local government, as I said, gives you a really good overview of a local area and a sort of a region, and then central government gives you that national picture. So I would definitely suggest to go just to apply and see how you go. Look at the schemes, look at the different routes in that are available. So, you know, there might be an apprenticeship you might want to do, there might be a graduate role, there might be, you know, a normal, just a job that you apply for. So keep an eye on the relevant job boards, keep an eye on any larger scale recruitment that's going on. And just apply, I would say, to be honest. Get an application in, read the guidance on how to apply, because every place will expect a slightly different style of application. So certainly in local government anyway, but in central government, if you want to get into national government, look at the job advert, because it will link to what's called success profiles. So that is how we recruit into central government, is based on the success profiles. So read up basically about the recruitment process that you're being expected to follow. I would say.
Do your research, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely.
And kind of, you know, looking back through you know, over the last however many years, how important has it been to be kind of resilient and adaptable?
I think really important, especially doing such a variety of roles. I think it's been really important to be resilient and to try and, where possible, I suppose, remember that when you start a new role, and I'd be well advised to take my own advice at the minute actually, is that when you start a new role, it's really important to remember that you're always new in a role once, and that's probably what I forgot. What I've been forgetting over the last couple of weeks. I've just started a new job, so I keep thinking to myself, you know, I should know this, I should know that, but actually, you know, you're never going to know anything when you come into a new job, or very, very rarely, especially at the start of your career. So it's about remembering that actually you've done it before and you can do it again, sort of thing. And if you haven't done it before, then you'll have definitely been either to uni, or you'll have had success in other areas of your life in other ways. So it's about thinking back to those, I'd say.
And I think if you are kind of having any challenges, particularly with like systems and things like that, it's always worth, you know, putting a bit of a shout out as well to see if anybody else, because particularly I'd imagine in the civil service, like Katie was saying, that there's a lot of people that are blind and partially sighted that are working in it. So chances are if you push a question out about a system that's being used, somebody's probably going to have the answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that all goes back to the whole networking point. Really use your networks for all they're worth. Really, that's all I would say with that. That links back to that.
Really, really top advice. Okay, I'm going to check Amadeep in now and see if we've had any questions.
Martin, yes, we've had 7 questions.
Oh,
good, because we've got 15 minutes to fill. So.
Wow. Okay.
Great. Okay, so the first question for Charlie is: how did your stress manifest over the time?
Oh, okay. It was, I would say that's quite obvious, really. You can tell if you're not sleeping at night. So I wasn't sleeping very well at night. I was panicking a lot, and I was thinking to myself, actually, I'm not doing very well at this. That panic became obvious, I think, when I was in the classroom, because it was obvious to pupils and to my colleagues. And I think it manifested itself when it didn't feel natural, I think. And that when things don't feel natural to you, that's when stress comes. And I think I realized pretty quickly that it wasn't a good working pattern that I had, and I wanted to change it, and quickly.
I guess it's when we were talking about being solutions based as well, and maybe it's that point where you just think that you've exhausted all the potential solutions and it still isn't working.
Absolutely, and you can't think of any other way around the problem. And that was when I felt the most stressed, and when I felt as though there was almost like no getting back. So I thought to myself, well, I've started this, and I've got to finish it now because I've started it. So I think that's another trigger, was when I realized, actually, you know what, actually I can get out of it, and I will get out of it, sort of thing. But I would say, I hope that's answered your question.
Next one for you. Which employer gave you the best score and why? There is a comment after that, but I won't read that.
Oh, okay. I would say all the employers I've had have given me really good support, actually. I would say that RNIB gave me really good support from getting into work, and then I would say all of my employers actually have given me that support, but only because I think I've been really clear about the fact that what I needed and why. And if I hadn't done that, then things wouldn't have been organised as quickly. So when I joined particularly Redbridge and the civil service, neither of those organisations were working with blind people regularly. So I just made it really clear what I needed and why. And I think because I did that, the support was put in place really quickly.
Okay, good. This is a question for both of you. How have you dealt with any difficult colleagues or managers?
Do you want to kick off, Martin, or shall I with that one?
I probably can, actually. It's a tricky one, because it's there's different situations, and and I've, to some extent, with some of them I've probably got all my hands up myself, but I did used to work in HR for a university that will remain nameless, but I had quite a few problems making the role accessible and making some colleagues understand that they needed to change the way that they'd done things. And I remember just speaking to not even my line manager, because my line manager wasn't particularly great, but kind of her manager, and just saying some of the frustrations that I was having, and what some of the clear solutions to that were. And then it kind of got taken more seriously. But saying that, I was quite young and inexperienced, and I think now I'd probably be able to handle that better. But I think I wasn't getting the assistance that I needed from my line manager, and it wasn't like I was kind of going and telling tales, because that certainly wasn't what it was. I just didn't feel that my line manager knew the best way to support me. And it was a kind of informal chat, and I got some advice, and then that kind of manager was keeping an eye out as well, and cutting me a little bit of slack. So I've never really had like a problematic line manager. I've had a couple of poor line managers, but again, I've been quite good at kind of saying what I want to do, what I want to learn, and that kind of then puts the onus on them to do that for you. So yeah, that's kind of the best that I can offer, really.
Yeah. So should I come in on that one as well?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, no problem. So similarly to Martin, I would say I've never had any line manager who I haven't liked ever, I would say. I've always got on with them. I would say I've been in teams that work better than others. So I've worked in teams where there's a really good atmosphere, people get on really, really well. And then I've worked in teams where the atmosphere is maybe a bit more strained, it is a bit more challenging. And I would say the way around that is by always being open with people if you can, like speaking to people and never sort of bottling it up, I would say. So saying to your manager, you think this could change or that could change, and it's about giving sort of feedback in a constructive way. And also I think it just goes back to being just really open with people as far as you can. And then if there is a situation that you find yourself, you're in sort of like almost like a rut and you think I can't get out of this, then maybe your solution will be to find another role, or to find a role with a different team potentially.
I also think that if me and Charlie are saying that we've never had particularly bad line managers, but if we have supplied clients in the past where their line managers aren't being supportive and aren't putting the adjustments in place, and that's been reported to HR, and then HR have got involved, and actually then the solutions have been put in place, and don't be scared to do that, because there's a million examples that I can think of where that's happened, and they've then the managers understand better, the adaptations are put in place, and that individual can perform better, and it sorts the solution out. So if you're not getting where you need to, or you don't feel confident challenging a line manager, go and speak to HR and see what they can do for you, because that's what they're there for.
Also worth looking at your employer's support mechanisms as well. So you might have an employee assistance line that you can ring for any sort of confidential questions. You could reach out to ACAS, for example, another organisation. So there's all sorts of things out there if you feel you're not being supported right, or if your line manager isn't giving you the adjustments that you need.
Cool. Next question.
Very well answered there. So did you have a support worker after the teacher training?
No. So the only role I've never ever needed the support worker in was teaching. Not that that's a bad thing, having a support worker at all, but in the roles that I've done, I've always either been able to do the role without a support worker, or there's been what's called job carving done. So that means if a role is changed or adapted slightly to fit what you need to do. So for example, at the moment I'm working in a policy role, and one of my tasks is to provide secretariat support in a meeting and take meeting notes, which is absolutely fine. But one of my tasks would have been to prepare the PowerPoint presentation for the meeting. And I can't do that. My colleagues know that, and they've been absolutely fantastic. So one of my colleagues has agreed to do the PowerPoint presentation for me and then send it to me to send round. So that's meant that the job has been carved effectively, so that I can then do the work effectively. So that's another option available to you as well.
All right, next question is probably linked to what you explained earlier. Did you work on Brexit?
I've worked on Brexit focused issues, but not directly on Brexit, no. So I worked on recruiting people to deal with Brexit, but I didn't actually work on Brexit itself, no, because I wasn't in the trade side of the department. I was in the recruitment side. So we were recruiting people to do the Brexit doing rather than me actually doing that. But at the moment I'm working on coronavirus, so I'm working on now what is, I would say at the moment, the most current issue that we're facing as a country, really.
Okay, there's two questions, but they're kind of very related. So you have to be a British citizen to apply, I'm guessing, for civil service. And then the second part to that is there an age bracket to apply for the stream?
Okay, so the age bracket is very easy. No, there is no upper age limit or lower age limit. As long as you meet the criteria, you're welcome to apply. And in terms of residency, you'd need to check with the civil service or whoever your employer is. I couldn't really give any advice on that, and I wouldn't want to. So you would need to reach out to the employer and see whether you meet the residency criteria. I think some roles will require British citizenship, I think, from memory, but you'll need to check that.
Brilliant. Is that all the questions, Amadou?
Yeah, that was the last question.
Okay, perfect. I think just to say, if anybody's got any questions that they haven't asked tonight, Charlie's kindly said that if you want to send us questions, he'll try his best to answer them afterwards. So
yeah, please go ahead and send in questions.
If you want to drop an email to employment@pocklington-trust.org.uk, we can pick them up. Also,
what has just come through? Do we ask this last one?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So with job carving, did you take work off your colleagues?
In this instance, no, but there's been times where I have done, and then also colleagues know that they can always reach out to me if they've got any anything they need me to do. So sometimes the colleague who took the work on that occasion might reach out to me and say, oh, can you just do this at short notice, or can you do that? So it's sort of a reciprocal agreement, so we know that, you know, when things come in that I can take them. So yeah, I hope that's sort of semi-answered it. So in this instance, no, not directly sort of like for like, but equally, as I say, my colleague will then reach out to me at short notice and just say, can you do this? And which is absolutely fine.
It's teamwork, isn't it, essentially?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So we will wrap up there. Just finally to say, if you're looking for some employment support, again, just drop us an email at employment@pocklington-trust.org.uk. We've just added some new resources on there. Some new case studies of examples of supportive employers that have been getting it right, one of which is in local government, another one's BT. I strongly suggest checking them out. And you can find all of that at our website, which is www.pocklington-trust.org.uk/employment. Charlie, I just want to say a massive thank you, mate.
Thanks to you too as well.
Found that really interesting. I know that we've spoke a lot over the years, and you know we catch up frequently, but I think we've never really pieced it all together like that. And you know, I think it's, you know, if I was sat at home, I'd you know, and thinking about changing careers or worried that I'd picked the wrong career, then you know, listening to your story would give me a lot of confidence that you can go on and, you know, and do that. So I also know that you're really busy and must be mad busy in your current role as well. So you know,
quite busy. Yeah.
Thanks for giving us the time.
No problem at all, and thanks to all of you as well for tuning in, whether that's live, as I say, or on the recording. Thanks ever so much. And it's sort of weird not being in a room face to face, but hopefully that can happen at some point.
Brilliant. Okay, guys, I'm going to say goodbye, and we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.